Jeff Tourial, the now Associate West Coast Conference Commissioner. Jeff, welcome to BYU Sports Nation.
Thanks for having me, guys. Always a pleasure.
Can you believe it's almost been a year since you were that first simulcast guest?
I do, because I think I regret the way I signed the flag. So I'd love to have another crack at that one day, maybe.
We've got it in the studio right here. I'm going to have to find your name. I don't even know where it is. Wait, what was bad about signing the flag? What was?
I just remember there was so much pressure on me to get it right because I was the first one on there. And hopefully now a year later it's been buried enough that nobody would even notice.
It is littered with signatures, so yeah, it might be hard to find.
Jeff Tourial with us on BYU Sports Nation. As we just mentioned, Jeff, 5th year in a row, the BYUtv will be in Las Vegas for the entirety of the tournament. What's the relationship like between BYUtv and the conference, along with ESPN, to ensure that each and every WCC game has the national exposure you want it to have?
Well, and that's just it, Spencer. We're so fortunate to have a great partner in BYUtv come into our tournament and put on such a great show. I mean, we think we have a pretty good event, and we know that the games themselves are competitive, but to really be able to bring that national and international audience to it, knowing that realistically ESPN cannot do 18 games. They've got plenty of other conference tournaments they've got to cover as well. And so to have BYU broadcasting there is we're just truly fortunate, and hard to believe it's already going to be the 5th year, and hopefully it's the 5th of 200 or more years.
I plan on being at every single one of those. 5 years ago is interesting because BYUtv went down. We went down there, and BYU was not even in the league. But it's been fun to grow that relationship. What can fans expect this year out of the Vegas experience with the WCC tournament?
Well, I think the reason that fans go to the games are for the games, and so the tournament, we really want it to be kind of an engulfing, and maybe that's not the right word, a truly kind of immersive experience, and so that there's more to do than just the games, and we can certainly talk about that. But the draw, no doubt, is the games themselves, and I think on both the women's side and the men's side, from what we've seen so far with 3 dates left in the regular season, I think Vegas is going to be pretty wild on the court.
Jeff, what is better for the league, to have a dominant 1 seed, overall seed projected in the NCAA tournament like Gonzaga, or maybe to have 3 bids of teams outside the top 20? Do you care? What's better?
I mean, for me personally, I want all 10 teams in the NCAA tournament. That may be a bit of a stretch, but that's the goal. And the more the better, because our job is to put our teams in the best position we can to get that national exposure. Obviously, at the end of the day, we don't play the games, and whatever is going to happen is going to happen. But we do want quantity, but there's no taking away what Gonzaga has done so far this year is remarkable. And my goodness, that is a very talented team.
Absolutely, and it's going to be a challenge for BYU to play them next week in Spokane next Saturday. Well, it seems like the league is up. We're seeing that, I guess, in the RPI. But what's the perception that you're getting of WCC basketball this season?
Well, I would agree with that, Jeremy. I think the league is as good as it's been because it's deeper than it's been. And so what people may see from afar who don't follow it as closely is they look at records and they see one ranked team, again, a very highly ranked team, and they see some middle-of-the-pack teams with 500-ish records, and they say, oh, the league is down, or of course Gonzaga is dominating because that league's not very good. But the reality is it's not just Gonzaga, BYU, and St. Mary's in some order, and then everybody else. It's everybody else has gotten better, and the middle of the conference is much stronger than it was, and the bottom of the conference is much stronger than it was. Look at last night. Pacific, our last-place team right now, played Gonzaga about as well as anybody has in conference play, and it's hard to make people understand that, and that's just a challenge we face in our office daily.
When you look at a team like BYU or St. Mary's, both bubbly when it comes to making the NCAA tournament, how do you sell those teams to people on the committee or propagate for them to get in the field of 68?
Well, and part of it is that the committee has made it very clear over the years that they want teams to challenge themselves and play the best possible schedule. And I think, in my opinion, that will help BYU's case down the stretch this year. We do have regular calls with committee members And that's nothing special to the West Coast Conference. Each conference has that scheduled, and we do keep in touch with committee members that are assigned to cover our conference. We're in regular touch with so-and-so is injured and isn't going to play tonight, but he'll be back in 2 weeks, that kind of thing, keeping them up to date. And the good thing is, thanks in part to our television partners, we've got such great exposure that it's very easy for the committee to keep up with West Coast Conference teams anywhere in the country.
What's the vibe in these conversations with the committee about West Coast Conference hoops?
I think the committee recognizes how strong our conference is, and I think, I take some solace in that because, again, I read the same things as you guys on the internet from college basketball writers and so on, and I get frustrated at times of seeing the West Coast Conference and one bid league mentioned together, but I don't think the committee views us that way. Now, that's not to say, obviously, that at the end of the day that is or isn't how their vote will go. It's lots still to be determined over the next few weeks, but I feel pretty good about where we are right now.
So put on your bracketology hat. If the tournament was today, do you think BYU would be in?
Yes.
Why do you say that?
Strong non-conference schedule, 21 wins to this point against a pretty strong schedule. I think they're in.
Jeff Tourial
Let's
on
have Jeff
BYU
on
Sports.
more often.
Yeah, seriously. You're bringing it, man. We need to get you in the bracketology hat more often.
Keep in mind, I don't have a vote, though. and I may be a little bit biased.
Light WCC bias there.
Maybe just a little.
Jeff, you were at the game last night in the Marriott Center watching Tyler Haws and Anson Winder and Skylar Halford, Josh Sharp, those four seniors play their final regular season home game. What do you think about the Marriott Center and the unique college basketball experience in Provo, Utah?
It's such an awesome experience. I love going to games in that building. The fans are fantastic. The game management folks do such a great job of putting on a fantastic event. It's such a great show. I truly enjoy it. And, the senior night piece, to me, is always interesting because, did that have something to do with BYU not scoring for the first 7 minutes? I have no idea, but maybe. And then you look at it from the other side, and you're San Diego. Do you stay there and watch that, or do you go back in the locker room, which is what San Diego did, and come back out and have only a minute or two to warm up before the game? So I always take these senior night, the early parts of those games with a grain of salt. I mean, we saw for San Diego this past Saturday, almost a week ago now, and they had their senior day against St. Mary's, and they came out strong on a run, and then maybe the adrenaline started to wear off, and St. Mary's was able to get back and win that game. So to me, that's just fascinating. I don't know what you make of it, but it's interesting to watch.
The other day, we discussed the West Coast Conference Player of the Year and who we thought the nominees were. I don't think that there's a clear winner, although I think that Kyle Wiltshire he might have won it last night with his 45-point performance. It's been an interesting year that way in the league where you have some really good players, but there's not been maybe one that has stood out, right?
I'd agree with that, and I was thinking about that this morning. Is if I had a vote, who would I vote for? And to be clear, I don't. I have no say. None of us in the
It's all the coaches, right?
Correct. It's all the head coaches, so none of us have any say whatsoever in who's going to win those kinds of awards. But you're right, it is fascinating. I mean, what Wiltshire did last night was remarkable, and I had a chance to watch some of the game late night from my hotel because that's what I do at 2 in the morning on a Friday night or Friday morning. But
party.
He was. I mean, what Wiltshire did was very impressive. I mean, it wasn't like they were necessarily running plays to get him the ball. It was totally in the flow of the offense, and he had a fantastic night. But, I mean, you've got a couple of guys on the BYU team that would certainly be in that discussion, and I think Brad Waldo at St. Mary's certainly, you can't skip discussing him as well. So who knows?
Jeff Tourial, the Associate Commissioner of the West Coast Conference, bringing it on BYU Sports Nation. Jeff, always great to talk to you. We will see you in Las Vegas.
All right, thanks, guys. Can't wait to see you in Vegas in less than 2 weeks.